Good morning. How are you, Ryan?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Rob. Very well.
Good, good. So, where are you calling, or where am I calling you at today?
Okay, so I work in a place called Gentofte, which is around about 15 minutes north of Copenhagen in Denmark. I work for a company called Orsted. So we are the developer and kind of maintenance runner of offshore wind around the world.
Oh, wow. Crikey. So, from the Aston school to Denmark, via a circuitous route, I've no doubt. So, as I said previously, part of this is about talking, and really we're thinking of the audience here of the year 10 and year 12 students in the Aston. So, would you like to just start by telling us what your fondest memory of your time at school was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I suppose I was very fortunate. I had a really enjoyable, I guess, kind of 6 years at the Aston School. Born and raised in Market Raisin, actually just across from the Aston on Anglian Way. I suppose fondest memory of the Aston School was the great passion, I guess, that the teacher showed us and kind of led us through. And I was heavily involved in the sports and kind of recreation side. But I really loved the fact that the Aston just had so much outdoor space. Is my fondest memory, be it from the playing football on the AstroTurf or playing cricket on the fields outside or rugby next door. I just thought we embraced. We were very lucky as a school to have such a huge amount of recreation and outdoor space. And when I was there, and I'm sure it's the same now, but we were also a very kind of highly accomplished school in terms of sports as well. It was, a fantastic time.
That's lovely, thank you. And that's obviously with the benefit of hindsight. So I would suggest that the students now maybe don't recognise or realise that that's not a failing. It's just a fact that whilst they're in amongst it. But that's lovely to hear that. And I know from my brief encounters with the school, because I only joined them before lockdown, as it were, as an enterprise advisor, it's a very vibrant place, and the teachers are really, they are so passionate. And I don't know about the space. I can't say how it's different between your time and now, but I can tell you there's a lot of green space still.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, that's lovely. So if I could ask you to sort of do that Sky thing with a rewind, rewind yourself back to when you were sort of a year 12, year 10, year 12 student, when it's about that time there's a lot of pressure on exams and you've got to think of your future. What was going through your mind at the time?
Yeah, I think that, Rob, I think it's a great question. I think I'm a very young 36-year-old at the minute, so it's probably a good it's probably a good kind of 18 years ago now. But it was an exciting time for me. I think I was born and raised in Market Raisin, which is a big town in Lincolnshire, but realistically it's actually quite a small place. And I was really thinking about how could I find a big metropolis to go to and start to kind of expand my horizons. So I was more thinking about actually my experience at university rather than necessarily the topics that I was going to, I guess, cover. So I was thinking about the likes of Liverpool and Manchester and Newcastle, these big centres. And I suppose my abiding memory now when I reflect on it is that I probably spent more time reflecting on the place that I was going to rather than necessarily the kind of vocation that I was going to follow. I was quite fortunate that I was supported by some great teachers at the time who really supported me to say, go for what you find energy in, go for what you find interesting. So I did. I found ancient history and archaeology very interesting at the time. So I followed my passion and I went to Liverpool and spent 3 years there. But I think abiding memory was it was an exciting time, but it was a time on reflection where I could have spent more time reflecting on the vocation rather than, I guess, the experience that I was about to kind of have.
And those experiences are now literally all up in the air with the recent COVID crisis. And whilst I can't live this, I hope empathise with the fact how understandably nervous students are at the moment. So if times were normal and year 10 and year 12 were kind of looking to the future, it would be a daunting time anyway. But I love the fact you said it was exciting. So that's hindsight again, that's exciting. So it's how you embrace it. It's what you do with it.
Yeah.
And the other thing which struck me there was some of the people I've worked with in the past who are very good and successful at what they do, they're in a place where they never thought they'd start out at. So the best army officer I ever worked with was a zoology graduate.
Yeah.
And he often used to joke self-deprecatingly that what the hell zoology's got to do with leading men, I don't know, but he was very good at it. So I guess the message there is, so yeah, follow your passion, absolutely. Don't be too hung up on things, but take the energy, take it as an opportunity, a time of opportunity.
Absolutely, Rob. And I think something that we talk to our employees here about and what we do is that you don't always have to solve the whole equation in one go. So when I reflect back on my time now as being a kind of a very young 17-year-old or 18-year-old when I was making these choices, is that at times you can feel like you're trying to solve the whole kind of question in one foul swoop. So find your career, know what you're going to do. I think it's absolutely fine that we talk about these broad ranges of experience now. Go out there and do something diverse. Go out there and have an experience. And you know what? If you have an experience for 2 to 3 to 4 years in an area, I did in archaeology. Loved it, absolutely loved it, but I didn't find that as my kind of eventual vocation. So that was fine. But this kind of early, and again, not to get too deep, but that kind of early career mobility and experience, I think for now, in terms of the environment we find ourselves in, is so important for people that we find successful in our business and our future leaders. We want these broad profiles from people because that's where business is going to go in the future.
Very, very much so. We talk about portfolio careers, and we talk about how I'm not denouncing experts, but expertise is going to be a less of a thing. We need more sort of generalists. You just sort of hinted at something else I wanted to ask you there. So from archaeology graduate to HR, that must have been an interesting interview. And how did you set yourself?
It was, and I mean, look, I think it's not a unique story. I think when people leave university, you've had a great 3 or 4 years or 5 years if you've done something like, I guess, law or medicine. And I found myself in a position where I could have stayed in archaeology, but unfortunately there probably wasn't the framework or the infrastructure at the time to support kind of career jobs, or I could go out into the big scary world of the marketplace and find myself a job. So I went out and found myself a role in HR as a HR assistant for a company in Chester. And again, I was fortunate to have a great manager, a great first manager, who decided to send me back to university to look at my kind of CIPD, which is the qualification for HR charter in the UK, and really kind of start my journey into HR from there. So it wasn't an intended plan at the time. It was an intended plan to get myself a job, to get myself a salary coming in so I could support myself after university. But actually, again, like we talked about earlier in terms of that diversity, I enjoyed the experience. I thought to myself, I'm going to give this 2 or 3 years and I'll see where I am. And actually, as I start to build my career from there, I started to find that HR was actually quite a diverse career to go into, and you could stretch yourself in different ways. And yeah, a short decade later, I'm still here. So.
Okay, so I heard for me anyway, a great message that I'd like to, I think, pass on was great. Have a plan, but be prepared to shift it. You know, it's not a rigid plan. It's not to say that if you want to, let's say, graduate in X and you don't do it in 4 years' time, you fail. You haven't. So you have a plan, but be flexible and how you use it. So in that, just going back to the interview, and it kind of alludes to something else which I think is important. So as a graduate then, did you have the opportunity to sell your transferable skills in the interview? And if you did, how did you go about it?
In terms of transferring to HR from archaeology?
Yes, sorry, that was a badly phrased question. Thank you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think something that any kind of qualification will give you, especially a degree, is that it gives you a competence and it gives you a level of learning. So as I approached that role, I probably didn't have, when I read the role profile, I didn't have any of the accountabilities and kind of main criteria, to be fair. But what I could show is that I'd achieved something over a 3-year period and achieved my degree. I delivered work on time. I'd worked in groups. I delivered projects. So what I would normally say is that when we kind of look at kind of transferable skills when you're going for new jobs, is you will have experience. It's just going to take time to reflect on it. So take whatever role profile you have, take those key accountabilities, and I'll guarantee you, if you really think and reflect on it, you will have examples from your either your school life or your university life that you can show and you can compare. At times it can be quite daunting and you'll think, "Oh, I'm never going to do this. I've not got any of the qualifications." But I'll guarantee that most recruiters now are looking for people in terms of attitude and culture and drive. And if you can bring that to those interviews, then yeah, you're halfway there already.
That's brilliant. And that rings a lot of bells. We've been doing a series of interviews with people in Lincolnshire to support the curriculum, and one of them was around recruitment. And so you've, without realising it, you've reflected exactly, well, not exactly, a lot of things that the recruiter said. So one thing which you haven't mentioned, because I haven't asked you about, and it's become much more of a topic of late, is resilience. Now, looking at your profile on LinkedIn, you kind of maintained a career profile and path during the 2012 financial crisis. So in terms of resilience, what kind of things could you share with the future workforce that are now at the Aston?
Wow, resilience, it's such a fundamental building block of anyone's career. I think if you look at any role in the world, even if you go up to Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, through to his cabinet, through to anyone in your local area, resilience is a key fundamental of delivering your role. So I did go through the financial crisis through 2012 and even into the steel crisis a few years later. So I'd gone from the finance industry into UK steel. For those of you who don't know about UK steel, we had let's call it a rough ride for 3 or 4 years. And I probably had the hardest time of my career actually then, in terms of probably what I'd reflect on as kind of pressure in terms of deliverables, hard working environments. And what people will say to you at the time is that you'll look back on these and it will really kind of stand you in good stead for the future. But at the time, it feels like it's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you. But I can genuinely say I have learned more from them difficult potential failures than I have from any successes I've ever had in my career. That they will stand you in such good stead. It'll be such a building block of kind of the fundamental way you'll approach things in the future and how you'll find comfort in difficult situations. That actually, resilience at times is the art to embrace them difficult and awkward situations and know that, look, it's going to be all right. It is. It's just going to be okay. But at times you have to have them experiences to build yourself on. So resilience was a core part of kind of my mid-career in terms of thinking, I'm not going to leave an industry just because it's hard. I'm going to take the advice of those around me to stick with it. And I know that I'll be a much stronger person out the back of it. And now I look back, 6 to 8 years later, and I rely on most of those skills on a daily basis now. Whereas at the time, I thought I'll do anything to get out of this situation. But it was a real fundamental building block to get me where I am today.
Oh, thanks again, and again appreciating the year 10 and 12s, but because of their time in life, that they potentially won't have had or hopefully won't have had to endure or build up resilience because they've had a good life. But I think the message there is for them is to say, okay, here's a guy he's, if I may be so cheesy, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Yeah, and it's possible. It is absolutely possible. So although times are tough, things are doable. Okay, that's brilliant. So finally then, just to wrap up, what message would you send to the year 10s and the year 12s who are now in that situation, given everything we've spoken about and given the current situation, from a professional that has lived in rough times and has now carved himself a career that was from Aston to Denmark?
I think it's hard sometimes when you're in the moment to understand the range of opportunity that you have. But as a year 10 and year 12, you've got such a diverse range of opportunity right now, and you might not see it. But speaking as a guy fastly approaching his 40s, you do have so many options out in front of you. And like I say, I'll come back to what I said at the start. You don't have to solve the equation all in one go. Go out there, have experience, take broad experience, change your career at times. It might be the fact that you've got energy in a vocation right now. Chase it, pull that string, follow that thread. And you know what, after 2 or 3 years of doing it, if you want to change. I think the environment and the culture that we're going to go into in the next 5 to 10 years is that the way in which we employ people across the world will change dynamically. COVID has shown us that. But in terms of before COVID, organizations were working more flexibly, they're working more globally. the opportunity that you have, you know, lift your head over the horizon and see what's there. The best advice I think I could ever give anyone, and we talk to people about it now in our organization, is to say, you know, have that lighthouse in the future that you want to work towards, but understand that your journey might be a windy one. You'll go left and you'll go right, and sometimes you'll enjoy it and sometimes you won't. But if you're always working towards that lighthouse, and that lighthouse might be, I want a solid job, I want security for my family, I would like to live abroad. I think, you know, having something to work towards is super important, but knowing that the journey there is the most valuable piece, and it can be really diverse, would probably be what I'd say to them.
Brilliant, thank you. And that's a lovely summary of everything we've spoken about, because sometimes when I do this, I try to just finish off by summarising, but that is absolutely brilliant. So that just leads me to thank you very much. You'll now go into the Aston Year 10, Year 12 Hall of Fame as a reusable
Yeah,
asset.
fantastic. Yeah.
So, again, thank you very much, Ryan.